Hello everyone and welcome back to Eons Unknowns for Tier 3 of the Ultimate Conspiracy Theories Iceberg. I'm actually going to do 2 or 3 parts for this tier as things are starting to get a little bit more obscure, that way we can spend a little bit more time on each topic. This is a follow-up for Tier 2 which I will post a link for in the description. If you haven't checked that one out, go and do that now. In this tier, we're diving deep into things like the Voynich manuscript, ancient aliens, and the mystery of the Skull and Bones fraternity. And overall, we're about halfway through the iceberg now, so as we continue the series, each tier will take us further into the shadows where the lines between truth and fiction blur. So sit back, relax, and buckle up because things are about to get strange. Alright, so first up we've got Mary Magdalene, who is one of the most mysterious figures in Christian history. She is traditionally known as a devoted follower of Jesus, and some interpretations describe her as a repentant sinner, while others also highlight her role as one of the first witnesses to the resurrection. But there may be more to her story than what we've been told. One of the most popular conspiracy theories around her suggests that she wasn't just a follower of Jesus, but may have actually been his wife. This was popularized by books like the Da Vinci Code and proposed that they had children and that their bloodline continued in secret, possibly protected by groups like the Knights Templar. According to the theory, the church suppressed these details to maintain its power structure, fearing what the implications of a holy bloodline might have been. Another theory argues that her role in early Christianity was deliberately diminished. Some believe that she was actually a prominent leader among Jesus' disciples, and even possibly the true apostle to the apostles. There's also speculation surrounding the so-called Gnostic Gospels, particularly the Gospel of Mary, which is a text that portrays her as a spiritual confidant of Jesus. These texts were actually excluded from the Bible and lead some to claim that their suppression was an intentional effort to downplay her role. So do you guys think that she is a misunderstood follower, a hidden leader, or part of a larger historical cover-up? Next up is Satoshi Nakamoto, who's the mysterious figure behind Bitcoin, and if you're familiar with cryptocurrency, you've probably heard his name before. So in 2008, Nakamoto published the Bitcoin white paper, which laid out the framework for the world's first decentralized cryptocurrency. But despite Nakamoto's contribution to tech and finance, their true identity remains unknown. Since we don't know who Nakamoto is, it's given rise to a bunch of different conspiracy theories. Some believe that Nakamoto isn't an individual, but is actually a group of people or even a government entity. One theory suggests that Bitcoin was created by the CIA or the NSA as an experiment for digital currency, potentially as a tool for surveillance or control. One that I find really interesting is that Nakamoto is actually an artificial intelligence or an advanced algorithm that basically self-generated the concept of Bitcoin. There's also the theory that Nakamoto might be dead, since they're estimated to hold around 1 million bitcoins, which would be worth billions of dollars, but the coins remain untouched. Some see the inactivity as evidence that Nakamoto has passed, or that the identity was a group effort and the group has since disbanded. And then of course we've got theories that connect Nakamoto to extraterrestrial technology or advanced civilizations, claiming that Bitcoin's cryptographic complexity was way too advanced for human development at the time. Despite all of our interests, we may never know who Nakamoto's true identity is. And next up, we've got the Skull and Bones fraternity. If you're into secret societies and shady backroom dealings, this one's for you. So the Skull and Bones fraternity is this ultra exclusive club at Yale University that's been around since 1832, and it's got all of the ingredients for a solid conspiracy theory. First, they meet in this spooky windowless building called the Tomb, which has fueled plenty of speculation just on its own. There's rumors of bizarre rituals and ceremonies involving skulls and coffins that make it sound more like a cult than a college club. And there's only 15 members chosen each year, and they're all sworn to secrecy, so it's no wonder that people start asking questions. And here's where it gets a little more interesting. Some of their alumni include figures like George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, as well as John Kerry, that's 2 US presidents and a Secretary of State. This has led to the idea that Skull and Bones isn't just a college fraternity, but a pipeline to positions of serious power. There's theories that go so far as claiming that they're tied to the Illuminati or even some sort of shadow government that's running the world behind the scenes. things can get a little more murky. There's people that also claim that they use their connections to shape major events like elections, wars, and even economic policies. Add in the mysterious rituals and secretive nature, and there's the perfect recipe for some fun theories. Next up is Neanderthal Superiority. This one dives into ancient history and some pretty wild ideas about human evolution. So we all know Neanderthals as relatives of modern humans, often portrayed as primitive cavemen, but some theories suggest that we've been getting the story all wrong, and Neanderthals might have actually been superior to us in some ways. For starters, researchers have found evidence that Neanderthals actually had larger brains than modern humans, which has led to speculation that they might have been more intelligent. Some even believe that they had advanced tools, art, and social systems that rivaled or surpassed early Homo sapiens. The theory here is that they weren't the brutish, simplistic beings that we've been led to believe. They were possibly even a more sophisticated species. And here's where the conspiracy kicks in. Some believe that the idea of Neanderthal superiority has actually been suppressed or ignored because it challenges the narrative of human dominance. After all, if they were so advanced, why did they disappear? Theories range from climate change wiping them out to Homo sapiens directly wiping them out, either through competition or something a little more sinister like outright extermination. There's also a modern twist, and it says that Neanderthal DNA still influences some of us today and gives certain people traits like enhanced problem solving and physical endurance. It could just be misunderstood or forgotten history, but the story of Neanderthals seem to have more layers than we might think, and to me it raises big questions about who we are and where we came from. Next up, we've got infantile stem cells, which has been the subject of scientific breakthroughs and conspiracy theories. So stem cells are these building blocks of the human body that are capable of developing into nearly any type of cell. Infantile stem cells in particular are seen as the most versatile, and that's where things start to get a little controversial and a lot more mysterious. On a surface level, the scientific use of these cells is all about advancing medicine, curing diseases, regenerating organs, and even reversing aging. But there are some theories that suggest a darker side to the research. One idea floating around is that certain groups like governments, corporations, or secret orgs are actually hoarding infantile stem cells for their own agendas. And by own agendas, that would mean anti-aging treatments for the ultra-wealthy and experimental enhancements that give them an edge over regular people like us. Then you've got theories tied to the ethics of how these stem cells are sourced. Some claim that the demand for these infantile stem cells is fueling unethical practices. The lack of transparency in a lot of these research facilities really only adds fuel to the topic. Alright, now let's talk about ancient aliens, one of the most popular and controversial conspiracy theories that there is, and let me know in the comments if you've ever binged the show, as it's one of my favorites. The idea suggests that extraterrestrial beings visited Earth thousands of years ago and played a significant role in shaping human civilization. Supporters point to ancient monuments like the Pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, and the Nazca Lines as evidence. They argue that these structures are so advanced and precise that early humans couldn't have built them without some outside help. And the theory goes even further, claiming that ancient texts and artworks depict alien visitors, often describing them as gods. One of the biggest questions for me is, if aliens were really here, what did they want? Well, some say that they were helping humanity, teaching us to farm, build, and organize society. And others believe that their motives were a little scarier, possibly using humans as workers or subjects in genetic experimentation. Skeptics argue that these theories underestimate ancient humans, and whether you see it as hidden history or just hopeful fantasy, the ancient aliens theory taps into a timeless curiosity that pretty much everyone wants to know. Are we alone in the universe, and what if the proof has been here all along? Next up is Skyquakes, which is a phenomenon that's as mysterious as it is unsettling. Skyquakes are these loud, unexplained booms that seem to come from the sky. They've been reported all over the world for centuries, often with no clear cause. On the scientific side, some suggest that they're caused by natural events like meteors entering the atmosphere, underwater earthquakes that produce shockwaves, or even shifts in the Earth's magnetic field. But none of these explanations really seem to cover every case. And this is where some of the conspiracies kick in. secret military projects like hypersonic aircraft or weapons tests being tested right over our heads. Others suggest that they could be connected to HAARP, the controversial research program linked to weather manipulation and other strange atmospheric events. Then there's the idea that skyquakes are linked to UFO activity. Some believe that these booms are the sound of alien spacecraft breaking the sound barrier or even wormholes opening and closing. And if you really want to go deep, some people say that skyquakes are warning signs from a higher power pointing to prophecies or other impending disasters. Next up is the Aleph, which is a pretty complex concept that pops up in a few different fields like literature, math, and spiritualism, so there are a few different layers to this one. In literature, the Aleph comes from a short story by Jorge Luis Borges. In the story, it's described as a single point in space where you can see everything in the universe all at once. Some people believe that Borges wasn't just making this all up and that the Aleph could possibly be based on something real, maybe ancient knowledge or even alien technology. In math, it's used to talk about infinity. It's a symbol created by mathematician Georg Cantor to explain the idea that some infinities are bigger than others. I didn't know this, I thought that infinity was just infinity. Then there's the spiritual side. For example, in the Hebrew alphabet, it is the first letter that symbolizes unity and connection to the divine. Some theories suggest that it could represent a gateway to other dimensions or a link to a higher power, and maybe it's knowledge that has deliberately been kept secret. Whether it's a work of fiction, a math idea, or a spiritual symbol, the Aleph has many interpretations, and it seems like it's pointing to something much bigger. Next up is gray goo, a term that hides a really scary sci-fi concept. Gray goo refers to a doomsday scenario involving nanotechnology. It's pretty much the idea that self-replicating nanobots could spiral out of control, consuming all matter on Earth and creating copies of themselves until the planet is just a mass of tiny robots, which would make the Earth a gray goo. The concept comes from a 1986 book by Eric Drexler. In theory, these microscopic robots would be designed to perform useful tasks like repairing tissue or cleaning up pollution. But if something went wrong, like a programming error, or if they were hacked, they would switch into endless replication mode using everything as raw material. Now, it gets even creepier. Some theorists believe that gray goo is more than just science fiction. They argue that secret experiments in nanotechnology could already be happening, and without proper safeguards, the risk of an accident or intentional misuse isn't just possible, it's probable. And of course, there's also speculation that governments or corporations are in a current race to develop nanobots for military or industrial use. Topics like this make me worry about the danger of unchecked innovation. If true, that would mean that the likelihood of an accident happening is possibly higher. Alright, now let's dive into global cooling. This is a theory that's pretty much forgotten today, but was actually once a big part of environmental discussions. So back in the mid-20th century, before climate change became the major concern, there were actually warnings about the Earth heading into a cooling period instead of a warming one. Several scientists and media outlets predicted that a new ice age was on the way. They pointed to signs like cooler global temperatures, harsher winters, and the expansion of glaciers in some areas. And some scientists were so concerned about global cooling that they suggested we would be facing severe food shortages, massive crop failures, and a drop in the human population. Since then, the global cooling theory has largely been pushed aside as global temperatures started to rise again, especially after the 1980s. And as we now know, the focus shifted to global warming, and the term climate change has become much more prominent. But of course, some theorists believe that the shift from global cooling to global warming wasn't just natural progression and that it was actually a cover-up. The argument there is that the government or powerful organizations needed a new agenda to control industries in a way that fit their own agendas. Whether you think that global cooling was just a passing concern or part of a much larger plan, it's interesting to look back at how the environmental conversation has changed and how quickly theories go in and out of favor. Next is John Titor. I talked about him briefly when I covered the time traveler segment in Tier 1. He's one of the most famous alleged time travelers in modern conspiracy lore. So back in the early 2000s, a user by the name of John Titor started posting on online forums. He claimed to be a soldier from the year 2036. And apparently he traveled back to the early 21st century to fix a broken time machine, which according to him was vital to preventing global catastrophe. He made a bunch of predictions during his time online. Most of them were way off. He shared details about the future, like the development of time travel technology, the collapse of the US government, and a second American Civil War. Most people believe that the whole thing was just a big hoax, and then others also say that he could have been part of a psyop. Still, John Titor will always be a fun one, and so will time travel. There's just like a certain mystique when it comes to seeing what your future will be and going back in the past to relive or change things about your life. Alright, so that's going to wrap up part 1 of Tier 3. I will have part 2 out shortly, so keep an eye out for that. As always, like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.